Today, Sue Polowick and Lynette Felsch will be our presenters. Sue is a Sage 100 solution architect. She has over 15 years experience with ERP software. Sue's expertise include report design and process analyst of businesses for Sage 100 software for accounting, distribution, and manufacturing firms. Lynette is a Sage 100 solution architect, and she has been with RKL for 5 years and has been working with Sage 100 software for over 30. Lynette specializes in manufacturing for small businesses. She was a controller for 15 years prior to joining RKL, so you have a great wealth of knowledge presenting to you today. Also, your RKL reps are Lindsay Palladino on the West Coast and Michelle Lodano on the East Coast. Please do not hesitate to contact them should you have any questions. So without delay, we will get started.
Okay, thank you, Danica, and thank you everybody for being here, and hope everybody is well. So first, what I'd like to do is start out with just a short explanation of what we will be covering in this presentation. First, we'll be talking about some things that you can do to prepare for your Sage 100 year-end processes. Next, we'll address the calendar year-end process for your 1099 vendors. We'll cover the entire fiscal and calendar year-end Sage 100 processes. We'll point you to some resources Sage has made available to help guide you through these processes and answer some common questions. We'll spend the remainder of our time talking about closing payroll for the year, including preparation, year-end reports, printing and/or electronically filing tax-related forms and reports, closing the payroll year, uploading tax changes, and a few post-year-end considerations. And finally, there will be time at the end for questions and answers. So first, we recommend you talk with your IT provider to ensure that there's a solid disaster recovery plan in place. Next, if you are using paperless Office in Sage 100, confirm that it is set up to capture standard and period end reports in PDF format, and the RKL team can help you with this if needed. Always create a backup of each live company before closing the year. And I'll talk a little bit about the calendar year versus the fiscal year. The payroll module adheres to the calendar year, regardless of whether your general ledger fiscal year is different. Payroll consists of 4 periods divided into quarters. The MRP module, which is a manufacturing projection module, adheres to the calendar year, but has no impact on general ledger or any other subledgers. Inventory management gives you the option to adhere to the calendar year or your general ledger fiscal year. And this option is located in Inventory Management Setup menu under Inventory Management Options. All other subledger modules adhere to the general ledger fiscal year that you have set up in Sage 100. Okay, so in order to process year-end tax forms in Sage 100, there is a download provided by Sage called an IRD, Interim Release Download, that must be downloaded and installed. This IRD is typically available the 3rd week of December. The IRD is only compatible with the Sage 100 versions that are currently being supported by Sage. Before installing the IRD, confirm that your Sage 100 version and product update are compatible. In addition, you must also confirm that any third-party products you may have integrated with Sage 100 are also compatible with the minimum Sage 100 product update for your version. The product update level requirements differ depending on whether you have any 1099 non-employee compensation vendors, which is something new for this 2020 reporting year. The minimum product updates are listed here. If you need any update or IRD installed, please contact RKL support. The email address is listed here, and everybody will get a copy of this presentation. Also, if you need to upgrade from version 2017 or lower, please contact your RKL Customer Success Manager, and their contact info will be listed at the end of this presentation. So to determine what version of Sage 100 you are on, If you are using the classic view, which is the view the desktop view that has been around for a long time, go to Help at the top menu and then click on About Sage 100, and the information will display. If you're on version 2020, which doesn't have the classic view, or if you're on version 2018 or 2019 using the standard view, or a version lower than that, then go to Help and then click the Sage 100 icon, which is the icon on the far right, and that information will display. Okay. So if you have 1099 vendors and you're tracking 1099 information in Sage 100, in order to prepare for the 1099 printing or electronic filing, first go to Company Maintenance in the Library Master main menu and verify that your federal ID number is filled in there. Next, you can print the Payment History Report, which is located on the Accounts Payable Reports menu, and in the print screen, check the box for 1099 vendors only to review your 1099 vendor history payment amounts. To make any adjustments to these amounts, in Vendor Maintenance on the Additional tab, click the 1099 History icon, and a screen will appear that will allow you to choose the form type and year, then change the amounts for any box. Okay. Before we go any further in the 1099 process, keep in mind that if you are on a Sage 100 version that is 2017 or lower, you will not be able to print or electronically file 1099 forms from Sage 100 since your version is not compatible with the required 2020 IRD. To export the data from Sage 100 to merge onto printed forms or to forward to a third party, just reach out to support at RKL eSolutions and someone will assist you with that. When you're ready to begin the 1099 processing or the test run process, you can launch the Form 1099 reporting task from the Accounts Payable Reports menu. This task requires a separate installation on each workstation from which it will be accessed. After filling out the form type, vendor types, and calendar year, you can click the minimum year-to-date icon and enter a minimum amount for any boxes you wish, and then click Accept to move on to the next step. So 1099s are processed through a third-party product called Aatrix, which is embedded in Sage 100. You will be prompted to download the 2020 forms, and you can choose from any of three options. To choose Automatic Update, you will be guided through a couple of screens, and when the forms have been completed, you'll see a screen that says Update Complete, and you can click Close and Continue. If the automatic option doesn't work, then choose Download Update, and then browse to the Aatrix website for the download. If you choose Download Update, a screen will appear with a link. Click the link, and the Aatrix website will launch. Then scroll to Quarterly Updates, click Sage 100, and follow the prompts to download and install the forms. Once you have downloaded the 2020 forms, you can choose to test drive your 1099s or process them in real time. You can test drive for all your 99 vendors or just the first 25. RKL strongly recommends you perform a test drive before live processing. The wizard will guide you through several screens. In the W2/1099 Preparer screen, your 1099 vendor's data will appear, and you have the opportunity to make changes to this data. Later in the wizard, you will be prompted whether to save your changes for next time. If you choose to save your changes, they will be saved in Aatrix only and not written back to your Sage 100 1099 data. And in this screen, clicking the next icon will display additional data and instructions and will eventually move you to the next screen of the wizard. You have the option to electronically file your forms for a fee charged by Aatrix, or you can print your 1099 forms from this task. You can order 1099 and 1096 forms from Sage by clicking the Checks and Forms link or by going to the Sage customer portal. This is perhaps the most important screen in the wizard. Choosing the correct option will determine whether your 1099 forms are printed or electronically filed. You have three options. The first is on the left. Complete the 1099 filing service, and this includes Aatrix doing everything for you, including printing, mailing, and filing of all your forms. On the right, you have the option of either choosing to electronically file the state 1099 and 1096 forms, and the number of forms required, the unit price, and the total price are listed if you check those boxes, or to print your forms, which are no cost. The other screens in the wizard are self-explanatory, and you can close out of this wizard at any point, and you will be prompted to save your changes. Okay, so next we'll talk about preparing for your Sage 100 fiscal year end. First, in fiscal year maintenance, you can set up your next fiscal year. If your fiscal year mirrors the calendar year, this is optional. Sage 100 will automatically create your next fiscal year end periods upon year-end processing and/or the first time you make a future posting to the next year. However, if your fiscal year is different from the calendar year, you must set up your next fiscal year in this task in order for your period beginning and ending dates to be correct. And there are a couple of settings in General Ledger options that you'll want to check before performing year-end processing. First is how your journal numbers are set up to reset and whether to copy your actual figures to your default budget upon year-end closing. And in each subledger module, you'll want to go to the Setup menu and open that module's Options task and verify the current period and the number of years of history to keep. Keep in mind that the number of years of history includes the current fiscal year. Some key points for reconciling your modules before year-end processing. All journals and registers must be posted, including those in General Ledger itself. If you have purchase order, the purchases clearing report should be run and reconciled. This is located on the purchase order period end menu. If you are using inventory management and have any items with a LIFO, FIFO, lot, or serial valuation method, you'll want to reconcile all negative tiers, which we'll go over in another slide. They are located on the period end menu as well. And reconcile all sub-ledger trial balances reports to the general ledger, keeping in mind that the trial balance reports run by posting date. If you choose to run your accounts receivable or accounts payable aging reports for year-end, keep in mind that they run by invoice date, so they may or may not reconcile to the trial balance, and they were not created for that purpose. And finally, please consult with your accountant about any other Sage 100 reconciliation that should be performed before year-end processing. Listed on this slide are the modules and the order of closing. Generally speaking, you'll be closing your modules in the opposite order in which they appear in your modules list, so that would be from the bottom up. In addition to the reconciliations covered in our previous slide, the following tasks should also be performed. For work order and manufacturing, reconcile the work in process, not trial balance, to the general ledger. For inventory management, perform a full physical count. For accounts receivable, calculate finance charges if applicable, print statements if you are using them, and validate sales rep commissions if this is being tracked in Sage 100. And if you're using bank reconciliation, reconcile to your bank's year-end statements. A couple of points. If you are using the MRP module, there are no period closings, only year-end closing, which clears out the previous year's projected demands. No impact is made to general ledger or any of the other subledgers. After performing year-end processing for general ledger, all income and expense account balances will be rolled into the retained earnings account. When period end processing is performed for a module, that module's current period is advanced to the next period, and all period to date and year to date buckets are calculated. In this slide, we are seeing vendor maintenance, and it is showing the new default period and the new vendor purchase and payment period and year to date figures. In Sage 100, you can access year-end checklists for any module by clicking the Help menu, choosing Help Topics, and clicking the Index tab, then typing in Checklist. There are other resources available which we'll be going through later in this presentation. A few year-end tips. You can choose which reports to print or PDF at period or year-end by going to each module's period end menu and choosing period end report selection. There you can create a list of reports and report settings. This list will automatically display when you're performing period end processing for that module. When period end processing is performed, history will be purged based on the number of years you have chosen to retain in that module's options task, which includes the current year. If you are on an older version of Sage 100, purchase order history will not be retained, but all purchase orders will remain in the open purchase order file and not be purged. Since Sage 100 does not allow posting to a closed period, you cannot post to any other module for a period earlier than the current general ledger period. For example, if general ledger's current period is January 2021 and accounts payable period is December 2020, you cannot post accounts payable transactions to December. However, general ledger posting closed periods can be reopened by going to the general ledger options task and changing the period and/or year to a prior period and/or year. Once the transactions have been posted into the prior period, you must then reperform period end processing for the reopened period and all subsequent periods. In company maintenance, which is in Library Master under the main menu, you have the option for each company to restrict postings to the current period plus one future period. This prevents accidental postings to future periods. And Sage recommends closing subledgers on a monthly basis to prevent accidental postings into prior periods. And finally, it is strongly recommended that all live companies are fully backed up before performing period end processing. The rest of this presentation will be devoted to payroll period end. Payroll has 4 periods, and they are quarters, for which period end is performed. It is important to understand how payroll history and data entry work in the different versions. For versions 2018 through 2020, when period end processing is run, quarter to date and year to date history are retained for the number of years chosen in payroll options. The minimum number of years allowed is 4, which includes the current fiscal year. Like all other Sage 100 modules, payroll data can be entered into future quarters and years. However, RKL recommends still making a backup of each live payroll company prior to period end processing to avoid any issues with lost data. And for versions 2017 and lower, when period end processing is run, quarter-to-date and year-to-date history are permanently purged from Sage 100. Therefore, RKL very strongly recommends still making a backup of each live payroll company prior to quarter-end processing, as this is the only way to retain payroll history in those versions. And in version 2017 and lower, it is not possible to enter payroll data into future quarters and periods. This slide shows a visual flowchart of the tasks required to close the payroll period. First, the last payroll of the year is processed. Then a full database backup is made. Then a new company is created to copy the live company to as a backup. Quarterly reports are run. The quarterly 941 and state tax forms are printed or electronically filed. The interim release download is downloaded from Sage's website and installed. The W-2s are printed. Period end processing is performed, and it does clear all quarter and year-to-date data in 2017 versions and lower. Tax updates are then downloaded and installed. And you must manually make changes to the tax table for any state unemployment, disability, and local taxes, as well as on versions 2017 and lower, all tax table changes must be manually made. Then you're ready to process the first payroll of the new quarter year. Okay. This slide shows this slide talks about the quarterly payroll and year-end reports, and it shows you where those reports are located and what they're called in both versions 2017 and 2018 through 20. And this slide shows each report and explains its purpose and content, which I will not bore you with. You can read up on this later if you like. So back to the topic of the IRD download. It will be available on Sage's website on approximately December 23rd, give or take a day or two. It must be downloaded and installed before running your W-2 forms. And you must also be on a supported version not only of Sage 100, but also of Payroll, since Payroll is now a separate installation and version level from Sage 100. The Sage 100 levels listed here are the same as those listed for 1099 forms. The payroll versions are independent and on their own. So you may need to install not only a product update for Sage 100, but possibly also a product update for your payroll version as well. If you are taking on the task of installing a new product update, new unlocking keys from Sage will be required. So you'll need to reach out to them. But RKL can perform these updates for you and obtain the unlocking keys from Sage. Okay. So to run quarterly tax and W-2 forms, you will access the federal and state tax reporting from the Payroll Period End menu. And again, access to this task requires a separate installation on each workstation that's running it. And as covered in the previous 1099 section, you may be prompted to download new forms. It depends on whether you've run your 1099s already or whether this is the first time you are running this task for 2020. And you must have an active business care plan, a live internet connection from the workstation, and of course be on a supported version and product update of Sage 100. To print your quarterly tax form, navigate to this task and choose the 941/Schedule B option or the applicable state tax form. To print W-2, W-3 forms, you'll go to the same task. You'll choose W-2, W-3 forms and fill out the W-2 information on the bottom of the screen. You may be prompted to install a mandatory or optional update. If so, click Yes and follow the on-screen instructions. Okay. So to perform period end processing for payroll, first, confirm that all quarter and year-end reports have been printed or PDF'd, and that your W-2 forms have been printed or electronically filed. Confirm that a backup has been made at the very minimum of the payroll and the general ledger data for the company, and then run your period end processing from your payroll period end task. After your period end processing is complete, you'll want to upload the tax updates as they are available. So prior to doing any of this, you'll want to go to your payroll setup menu and in your service notification maintenance, enter at least one Sage 100 user and email address in order to receive emails for tax table updates throughout the year. If you receive any emails or prompts about tax updates between now and after your last payroll of the year has been processed, please do not download or install them. After the last year's payroll, then you will want to download and install the updates before processing the first payroll for next year. This is a very simple process. You don't need to know anything. Just click yes to the prompts. So a few considerations for payroll year end. First, you'll need to access the e-filing reporting, federal and state reporting to get the update. You'll need an active business care plan with Sage, be on a supported version, and have installed the IRD and the Aatrix update. And it will verify upon install that you're on the appropriate product update. ACA features, if they apply, must be set up and data loaded prior to processing your ACA reporting. If you own Visual Integrator, data can be imported into the appropriate ACA files. Ensure that employer ACA maintenance is accurate for each year. Ensure that your fringe benefits have been processed. And also ensure that an employer contribution deduction for reporting of the ACA employer-sponsored health care is on your W-2. So a reminder for those of you that are on version 2018, the 2020 year-end IRD and 2021 Q1 tax table update will be the last year-end IRD and tax table update that will be provided for version 2018. So there is a link here that you can copy and paste to see Sage's supported versions. There's also a link here for Sage End of Year Center. So we'll talk about the Affordable Care Act, and this section of the guide is to assist with understanding some of the new IRS rules so Sage Payroll can be set up properly. However, keep in mind that it is not the official IRS guideline, and those guidelines could be changing constantly. Speak with your accountant, and also the website for the IRS is listed here to access the Affordable Care Act information. The Affordable Care Act will require employers with more than 50 employees or that are self-insured to report employee health insurance information to the IRS. Again, please see the IRS website to determine if you qualify for this. This slide contains a flow chart to help you determine if you are responsible for ACA reporting based on your company's particular situation. So if your organization is what's considered an applicable large employer, if you or other entities that are combined together with your organization employed an average of at least 50 full-time employees, including full-time equivalent employees or on business days during the preceding calendar year. So your previous year count determines if you'll be required to track and report employee and health information in the current year. Okay, there are two tasks that we'll talk about, actually three in the long run. The first is the ACA employee maintenance task, and that is used to gather information that is shown on the 1095-C reporting form. Once you've filled out the initial information, click the monthly detail icon. And then here, for each period, you'll record the offer of coverage and the employee share. There is an icon, a wheel icon on the right, that will allow you to copy data from one row down to the remaining rows. You'll list each person covered by insurance and for which month. The next task is ACA employer maintenance, which gathers information for the 1094-C form. If you have under 50 employees and you want to update this task, you must check the Include as Applicable checkbox. And at the end of the year, run the ACA Applicable Large Employer Report, which is the third task that we'll talk about. And this will automatically populate the monthly detail data in ACA employee maintenance in this previous slide. Okay. So this is just a disclaimer that the large employer report is offered as a self-help tool, and that SAGE does not guarantee the report's accuracy or applicability to your particular circumstances. So to comply with the Affordable Care Act, hours of service must be reported by calendar month, and because hours worked are tracked by pay periods in SAGE 100, and pay periods may span more than 1 month, this report performs a calculation to get an approximate monthly total. It is an estimate, and it may not reflect the exact actual number of hours worked. So for specific advice, please see a professional tax service provider or attorney as appropriate. Okay, so the Affordable Care Act requires employers to report the cost of coverage under an employee-sponsored group health plan. So reporting this cost requires that you set up in your payroll deduction code maintenance a deduction code for each different type of employer contribution for a healthcare plan. Okay. So how to generate these forms? You'll go to the same task after having downloaded the IRD, and that's where you will see a list of forms, and one of those forms will be 1094-C, and one will be 1095-C. The 1094 is generated for your company, the 1095 for each employee. So if you want to import your ACA information into SAGE 100 using the Visual Integrator module, if you have it, then there is an article in the SAGE knowledge base, and its name is listed here, and you can look that up, or you can contact RKL, and we'll assist you with that. If you have version 4.5 or 2013 installed and you're not able to upgrade at least to 2014 or higher, you can use the ACA worksheet to gather your ACA information, and then that can be imported into the appropriate tasks after you are on a higher version. So you can start to gather your information, just not be able to use it for reporting, and then you'll be able to import that into the correct tables. If you're paying 100 or more employees, as of September 1st, 2019, component due to data is required to be reported. It includes hours worked and pay information from the W-2 form by race, ethnicity, and sex. This is information that can be tracked in employee maintenance, and payroll version 2019 or 2.19.4 includes ethnicity or race and job category. Okay, so for the W-4 forms, the IRS released a new one effective January of 2020, and the new form must be used for all new employees that started on that day or later, and for all existing employees that changed their W-4 information after that date. Sage 100 versions 2017 and lower will not support the additional fields that are necessary to correctly calculate the federal taxes. So those taxes must be manually calculated using the IRS calculator, and the link is located here. If you need to upgrade your Sage 100 version, please reach out to your RKL Customer Success Manager. And also, just note that Windows 7 and 2008R servers are no longer supported by Sage 100 as of the first of this year, so a server upgrade will be required as well. Okay, so there will be some challenges due to recent changes by IRS to the 1099 forms. The best practices for filing your payroll 1099s and how you can best prepare will be presented by RKL on Thursday, January 14th at 11 a.m. Pacific Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. And the link is located here for you to sign up if you're interested.
It is also on our website under our events. I will also include it in the follow-up email.
Awesome. Thank you, Danica. So there are some year-end resources out there. You can contact RKL support. We're happy to help. There is Sage Online Help as well. There is also a Sage City Year-End Center. Feel free to tap into all those resources, which will help guide you through these processes and answer most of your questions. And as always, don't hesitate to reach out to us for any questions or issues that you may have. Your customer success managers are listed here. We have Lindsay Palladino. She is the customer success manager for the West. And we have Michelle Lodano, customer success manager for the East. Their phone numbers, their direct lines, and their email addresses are listed here. So thank you for attending. Happy holidays.